Okay, so let me share my screen. So share screen 1. Okay. So can you see the slides? Lucia, can you see the slides?
We can, David, but it's on
Okay.
presenter mode. So if you can just put it on,
Okay.
because we
So,
can see your notes as well.
oh yeah, perfect. So I will then share the other screen, screen 2. There we go. How's that?
Perfect.
Perfect. Right.
Yep.
So today's talk is on business forums or the construction mafia. Now, why is this topical? It's topical because it is a new beast. It's a very topical issue. Literally 16 minutes ago, a brand new media article came out on it. What is it? Where are we with it? How are we dealing with it as an industry? Are we afraid of it? As insurers, should you be aware of it? The answer is, as insurers, this is probably one of the biggest risks facing our industry at the moment, together with cash flow. So it is a criminal element. It's a huge problem, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. What we're experiencing on the ground is it's only getting worse. It's only getting more militant. So the talk today is just bringing everyone up to speed with where we are. What is the press talking about? What is this? How is it evolving? And is government doing anything to actually help the industry? And as an insurer, what should you be looking at? What should you be concerned about? As a contractor, I put my contractor hat on, what am I worried about? Okay, so it's critically important that you understand that the business forums, Construction Mafia, they are very alive, they're very kicking. We've got 7 high court applications across the country at the moment that we have launched against them. We are interdicting them and preventing them from going to various sites, stopping work, attacking people, threatening people. So this is where we are. So just to start off, let's have a look at what some of the, okay, this is 4 June 2023 in the Sunday World. Construction Mafia circles Tembisa Plaza revamp site. Okay, so basically been turned into a war zone as councillors and business people in the area fight with the contractor. So what does this tell us already? Here is a massive project. It's been turned literally into a war zone, but who's fighting? It's councillors and business people. So it's politicians and business people. Okay, it's a renovation project. It's residents, ward councillors, and local business forums demanded to benefit from the revamp project. Okay. What has the renovation business had to do? They've had to go to the High Court. They've had to obtain an interdict. What is an interdict? An interdict is a High Court order preventing you from behaving in a certain way. So when your parents said to you, stop doing that, or I'm going to put you in the naughty corner, your parents were interdicting you from behaving like a reprobate. Right. So 25th of April, 2023. So you can see this is all current. Okay. Public Works Minister Shishle Zikalala, there he is there looking very unimpressed. Lambastes the rising phenomena of construction mafia who invade, intimidate, disrupt delivery projects on the ground. Okay. So interestingly, the Honourable Minister believes that this is a rising phenomena called the construction mafia who invade, intimidate, and disrupt delivery projects on the ground. He seems to think that this is a new thing. It's not a new thing. It's something that's been around for nearly 6 years now, and just government has done nothing. They can't get to grips with it. So in this article, he says that the Department of Public Works is going to establish something called an economic sabotage unit, together with the police, to deal with economic crimes and hijackings of project sites. As I said, I've got 7 High Court applications out on the ground at the moment. The police refuse to get involved. We don't get any assistance from government. So I am yet to meet anyone from this economic sabotage unit. I'm yet to see it established. I'm yet to see anything move. So I'm not too sure why he's surprised about the existence of these people. They've been around for 6 years, but so be it. Right, 30 September 2022, SABC News, Construction Mafia continues to invade sites. Okay, continue to disrupt construction sites across the country. And then the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crimes Research. In 2019, it affected 183 infrastructure and construction projects worth more than 63 billion rand in South Africa. That's in 2019. So it's pre-COVID. Today, that number is probably way higher. I would say the number today is closer to 300 projects, and I would say the figure is closer to 100 billion rand, to be honest with you. And of course, you know, again, more and more, 20 Feb 2023, Cape Talk. This is incredibly sad. Wendy Kloppers, mom, wife, and official from the City of Cape Town's Environmental Affairs Department, fell victim to Construction Mafia. She was shot to death outside a construction site. Power Construction's N2 Gateway site also suffered an attack with firearms. 5 people were shot to death on that site. There's also been petrol bombings of various construction sites in the Western Cape. Right. Times Live, 12 February 2023, 1 billion rand housing project under threat from the Mafia in Cape Town. Okay. So what you can see is it's the big, heavily loaded infrastructure projects that are being attacked. Okay. The 500 million rand Delft Symphony Way project, earmarked for 3,300 beneficiaries, was violently attacked twice. Contractors were shot at only for the construction site, who petrol bombed a few days later. So that's 3,300 beneficiaries. This is a mixed, medium, and low-cost housing project. So what this is preventing is service delivery. It's preventing people from getting homes. It's incredibly sad. And then what you'll see, the comment here is this is one of the many building projects. We're targeted by criminals and community members, interfere with construction of homes through intimidation, extortion, gangsterism, threats, and unlawful occupation of homes. Okay, and the city has seen an increase of such incidents. Okay, let's jump back to 2019. Construction Mafia hijacks project worth billions of rands. Now, the Association of Quantity Surveyors also writes about it. Okay. Construction projects worth about 25 billion rand be violently disrupted and halted by armed groups. The gangs demand to be part of the project, burn the properties to the ground. Okay, here's the footage, looked like war zone. Okay, again, police were called but only arrived hours later and said the issue had been handed over to the Paarl police station. Contractors, female engineers, and other staff had to run for their lives into the veld. Okay. And the concern, these concerns comes after days. SA Forum of Civil Engineering Contractors, Vlcek, sent an SOS to the government for urgent intervention and halting a series of attacks on projects by AK-wielding thugs who were part of the so-called Construction Mafia. On Wednesday, Vlcek chief executive, armed gangs had disrupted and halted at least 78 projects in the country. Disruptions had already resulted in at least 110 engineers and other highly skilled technical personnel leaving the country because of the personal risk to their lives and the lack of work. Okay. Despite reporting to the police and incidents obtained, the disruptors were released after being arrested and continued disrupting the sites unabated with AK-47 rifles. And that is the famous Mtentu Bridge project in the Eastern Cape. What was happened here is the SAPS were actually caught ferrying the Construction Mafia members who were local political councillors back to the construction site armed, dropping them off at the site and then leaving. So it's frightening. So despite contractors being faced with the situation beyond their control, having laid charge of the police stations, and in most cases obtaining court interdicts against the disruptors, public sector clients such as Sunrail continue to mete out heavy penalties against the contractors for standing time. Now, why is that important? Because what you have is this contractual impasse on site. You've got Sunrail, you've got the Department of Public Works nationally handing out huge infrastructure projects. And I think Sunrail is probably the biggest employer in the market at the moment. They are handing out billions, or it is handing out billions of rands worth of infrastructure. That's what Mtentu looks like. It is going to be a beautiful bridge in the Eastern Cape. And what SANROL and the Department of Public Works is saying, Mr. Contractor, I've handed over the site to you. Site security is yours. Site disruption is yours. You need to look after the site. The works risk is yours. Don't make this my problem. But if you're late, I'm going to charge you penalties, and I'm not going to give you an extension of time, because this is no longer a force majeure, because you should be alive to the construction mafia. And when you priced your tender, you should have taken into account the fact that the construction mafia may arise, should have taken into account the fact that they may arrive on site, and you should have extra security, and don't ask me for extra money. Go away. So the employers such as SANROL, the employers such as the Department of Public Works are pushing back to the contractors that are being awarded these public tenders, and they're saying to the contractors, site security, site risk, site conditions are all your risk. They are all your responsibility. You need to deal with it. Now, what is happening? You've got contractors that are going to court, and as the newspaper articles say, they're getting high court orders. They are employing a local security or private security, and the high court orders are just being ignored. The local security just doesn't have the firepower. So what happens is the site gets brought to a complete halt, to a complete standstill. The works cease. What you know as insurance companies, the second all work stops on site, you have various provisions in your wording that says, well, you may come off cover. That's one problem. The second problem is if you don't have that wording, you are on cover for an extended time. So, and now you've got an insured who is now being faced with penalties, is now being, their cash flow is being adversely affected. And it's a very difficult situation because the contract is being attacked from both sides. Okay, so SANROL is now looking at international partners to help complete the Mthentu Bridge on the South Africa's Wild Coast and Eastern Cape. Avenger and Strabag, who were awarded the contract originally, terminated the contract in February. Okay. It was so bad at Mthentu that all work stopped. And within 6 or 7 months, they were already delayed to a point where they could not make that time back. They walked away from the project in 2019 just due to the violence on site. You just could not get that site working. And it's a very rural site. It's a very isolated site. And sadly, local political councillors were involved. The SAPS were involved, and they just could not get that site working. So incredibly sad, but that's what happened to Mthentu Bridge. It's just been awarded again. And I think the entire industry is waiting to see what happens down there and how or if it can actually get off the ground. Here are more media articles. Most of my talk today will be about public infrastructure projects. So work handed out by the Department of Public Works, SANROL, Jogeda, people like that, Kucha, CDC, people like that. But don't think that private projects are not impacted. This was an article. Pretoria, Gauteng, as a whole, are now being attacked by the construction mafia. So here is a newspaper article where it talks about attacks that occurred in Arcadia, Menlo Park, Brooklyn. Grew out 10 to 12 people have come to their building site twice, intimidating workers and demanding work for the local community. Okay. He said that all their workers, including bricklayers and plasterers, lived in Mamelodi and were local South Africans. Okay. Now, it seems to be on a month-to-month thing. And Amalgamated Business Forum was demanding they use one of their community leaders or pay him 10,000 Rand a month. Okay. So these are individuals that arrive on site unannounced and they just demand. So why am I showing you? Here we go. Here's another newspaper article, 2019 from MoneyWeb. Engineers leave South Africa due to the construction mafia. Basically, WBHO CEO Vlcek at the time saying the situation is so bad the engineers don't want to work on site. Avenge told reporters staff in the Mthentu Bridge project in Eastern Cape were threatened by people armed with illegal weapons who wanted to dictate which subcontractors Avenge should fire and who the company should replace them with. Despite getting court interdicts, the violence started. So as you can see, there are a number of layers. This is a problem that has so many facets to it and so many moving parts to it that it is such a difficult problem to pin down. And it's having a huge impact on the industry because you've got engineers, educated people that are no longer willing to go to site. They're no longer willing to work in the rural areas. They're no longer willing to go out there because it is just so dangerous. So let's start at the bottom. And the reason I start this talk, and I wanted to start this talk with all the newspaper articles, is I wanted to show you how widely it's been reported about. I wanted to show you how widely the various bodies and organizations like SAPSEC, like SICE, like the Quantity Surveyors body, the Architects body, they've all complained to government. They've all written in the newspapers. They've all been reported on. They've all commented. So what you've got is you've got an entire industry that has got the spotlight on it. You've got hundreds of newspaper articles that have been written on this issue. You've got every single professional body that has commented, written to government, asked for help, and there's just been silence. Nothing has come back from government. You've got the minister who's saying, oh, there's this new phenomenon that has arisen recently, and it's actually interfering in a few of our projects. It's not a new phenomenon. It's been in the paper since 2017, for goodness sake. But we continue. And it's incredibly frustrating for people in the industry. I've personally been shot at. We've been locked inside containers on site. We've been at site meetings and project meetings where 10 people have walked onto site, barged into our meeting and have taken over the meeting. We've been locked in. We've been prevented from leaving sites. I've had a rental car have about 15 bricks thrown at it. It's happened to me personally. When I go to construction sites now that I know are rural or are isolated, I first of all don't take my personal vehicle because I don't really want to be destroyed. But secondly, I go armed, and a lot of the engineers go armed. You cannot afford to be on a isolated construction site anymore without heavily armed security, which costs a packet, and without knowing how to handle yourself. The risks are just too high. So who's causing this problem? Where does it come from? And I put up here a slide, the problem causes. What are business forums? Okay, business forums are entities. They can be associations. They can be a private company, a PTY Ltd. They could be a CC. They are, let's call it, companies that have been established predominantly by very politically connected people and certain political office bearers like councillors, mayors, those types of things. And they traditionally look after a certain geographical area. So believe it or not, you have the Isipingo Business Forum, you have the Mamelodi Business Forum, PTY Ltd. These are registered companies. It has directors, and what it says, it approaches you much like a labor union and says to you, I am the business forum for this area. I represent the interests of the small businesses and the workers in the area. I see that you've just been given a huge project, and I want to ensure that the local community benefits. Now, when I pitch it to you like that, it sounds good. It sounds completely reasonable. And you say to me, but Dave, what's the problem with that? The problem with that is the business forum is not looking after the community. The business forum is not looking after the general populace. It is looking after its interests and its interests alone. Taxi associations are a huge problem with anything that has to do with bus routes, transport routes, the roads, trains. They actively get groups together and stop work. MK veterans are a huge problem in KwaZulu-Natal especially. They organize themselves very quickly. And it's quite interesting. They seem to be guns for hire because they will be doing what they're doing and stopping construction sites on behalf of someone else traditionally. So local communities are known for this now, especially if they live along a major public road and they see road work for construction works taking place. They will close the road on either side of the construction site. They will burn plant, they will destroy or steal material, and they will hold that construction site to ransom. If you just Google the N2 Umgeni Road interchange, you will see that EXR Construction was held hostage effectively on the Umgeni Road N2 interchange by two local communities. One was north of the bridge, one was south of the bridge. They both wanted to be employed on the project. EXR said, well, we're taking people from both communities. The communities felt that they were not being equally represented on site. So what they did is they just burnt everything to the ground. And they destroyed works, they destroyed all the plant, and I think they killed 2 people. You could not move on that site. It was a war zone. Ward councillors are also a problem. Steering committees are a problem. So what happens now is on every single major project, a CLO, a community liaison officer, gets appointed. The CLO is controlled by the employer, mainly a municipality or an organ of state. It is the CLO's job to go out there, and the PLC gets appointed as well. It's their job to go out as a committee, to speak to the local community, find out who the local laborers, bring them back, inform the local community what's going on, and ensure the fair distribution of work. What happens is ward councillors get involved and they say, oh, there's high unemployment in my area. The ward councillor then says to people in their area, go to the construction site, demand work. The ward councillor then comes down and says, you're not going to work in this area until you employ all of the people in my ward. But the construction site may be over 3 or 4 different wards. Now what happens? Every ward councillor comes down, every ward councillor starts issues. It creates an environment where the work just doesn't happen. And then of course, juristic entities, these are companies like security companies that you will employ on a project like a subcontractor. They will then say, oh, by the way, I'm actually a member of the Mamelodi Business Forum. And it's on their letterhead. This is how brazen this has become now. And as a member of the Mamelodi Business Forum, I'm entitled to 30% of this project. And you say, no, I'm sorry, sir, we've employed you to do security, stay in your lane. You arrive at work the next day and there are 7 people with machine guns at the front of the construction site. The entire labor force is outside on the road. And you walk up as the main contractor and you say, what's going on? No one's coming inside today because you didn't speak to us with respect and you didn't speak to us nicely yesterday. So the work is stopping until we have another meeting with you and until you give us some work, some more work. That is how this is happening at the moment. So as you can see, the problem causes, there's an array of them. When the trouble starts, you don't know who it is. So there's a lot of investigating that has to happen first. Okay, now where does this entitlement come from? It's bizarre. Because I've had hundreds of meetings with business forums. Some have ended with guns drawn and screaming. Others have ended with chairs being thrown. Others have ended with handshakes and very positive outcomes. So it's the most bizarre thing that you walk into these meetings these days and you don't know what's going to happen. Do I wear a bulletproof vest? Yes, I do. Because if I'm getting shot, I want to try and make sure that I survive it. And I don't say this callously, I don't say it lightly, it is the truth. I believe 3 weeks ago up the North Coast, the contract manager for a very large construction company went into a meeting with a business forum when he was driving out of sight that day, he was shot walking to his car from behind. These are realities, and we need to understand why it arises. Okay, so we have something called the Preferential Policy Procurement Framework Act, or Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, the triple PFA. No one calls it by its real name because it's a mouthful. In terms of that act, that is the act that governs all public procurement. So what does that mean? That act governs how government, the state, procures goods and services, how it appoints a contractor to build a road, how it appoints a contractor to build a bridge, how it appoints a contractor to refurbish a state building, a state-owned building, right? Every single government tender is subject to that act. That act has regulations. Now what happened? In 2017, new regulations were promulgated. These regulations were unconstitutional from the word go. The first minute that they were promulgated, they were irregular, they were unconstitutional. They were challenged and they were subsequently set aside. However, the problem they created was this. Regulation 9 had a subcontracting provision, and it said, if public procurement is above a value of 30 million rand, an organ of state must apply subcontracting to advanced designated groups. So what the regulation said, for any contract above 30 million, the government has no option. It must apply. Okay? And 30% of the value of the contract has to be awarded to and list designated groups, EMEs, QSEs, so emerging micro enterprises, qualified small enterprises, black males, black females, military veterans, people with disabilities, the list goes on. So, of course, military veterans sit up and go, oh, I'm entitled to 30% of the project. They don't look at the words if feasible. So you'll see regulation 9.1 says, if feasible, comma. Government has never once done a feasibility test on any construction project. Government has just blindly applied the obligation to subcontract. So what happened in 2017? These regulations get promulgated. And I'm very sorry to admit this, but it all started in eThekwini. We had a mayor at the time. She was incredibly influential, and she turned around to the Taxi Association, the Military Veterans Association, and her party, and she said, guys, there are these new 2017 regs. We're entitled to 30% of every single project. What is happening and why is this work not being handed out? And apparently she was told, no. It does get handed out, but the main contractor determines who it subcontracts with, which is fair. I am the main contractor. I must determine who my subcontractors are. The story goes, she says, no, that's not acceptable. I am going to determine who the main contractors contract with. And as the word on the street is, she then tells people, these organizations, you're entitled to 30%, go and get it. So where does the construction mafia, where do these business forums explode onto the scene? In eThekwini. And literally, it was like the Durban or KZN-based construction industry was set on fire. I will never forget it. It was, I think it was a Tuesday morning. I was driving to work, and literally my phone melted to pieces. I received so many calls because in one morning, it must have been 11 construction sites got attacked. And it was people walking up saying, you have to give me 30% of the work. I'm demanding 30% of the work. And if you don't give it to me, I'm going to go to the police station and I'm going to stop the work because it's illegal not to give me the work. And literally all hell broke loose. And it is on the misinterpretation of Regulation 9. That is where this entire entitlement stems from. And it doesn't matter how many court applications we launched. It doesn't matter. There were public speeches given in 2017 that you must go and get the work. You must go and demand 30% of the project value. It is not the intention of Regulation 9. And this is going to scare some of you. But even today, even though Regulation 9 does not exist anymore, these regulations are gone. They're unconstitutional. There are new regulations. In 2022, new regulations replace them. There are still government officials standing up and saying, go and get 30% of the work. You're entitled to 30% of the work. Go and get it. So the problem is, there's no narrative out there to tell these organizations that what you're doing is illegal, that what you're doing must stop, that you're not entitled to 30% of the work anymore. That regulation is gone. Okay. So what is the impact when your site gets attacked? So I'm putting my contractor hat back on. It delays service delivery. Okay, so that Cape Town project, you have 3,300 households. These are the poorest of the poor. These are people that have been waiting for their home since 1994. These are people that are on a list, are beneficiaries. They cannot get a home. There are bulk water projects, piping water to rural communities that can't get water. There are sanitation projects trying to bring waterborne sanitation to communities that haven't happened. There are still those VIP pit latrines all over the country. And people say, but how can it be? How can it be that there's no water? How can it be there's no sanitation? How can it be this road is so buggered? We have so many potholes. Well, if your project has been delayed, like some of them have been delayed for over a year, because if you go onto that site, you're going to get beaten or shot. What do? Okay, I'm a main contractor. My project has been delayed. I'm going to go into penalties. I'm going to lose my right to claim P's and G's. I'm going to run into financial distress. Damage to works, both permanent and temporary. I have seen entire asphalt plants burnt to the ground. I have watched people use the court papers we've served on them. I've watched them pour petrol on it, light the court papers, and throw the court papers into an office container, setting the office container on fire. It's damage to works, damage to plant, damage to material, damage to accommodation. And it's massive damage. It's irreparable. Damage to plants and equipment. I've watched more yellow plant get burned to the ground, stolen, stripped. Because as you can imagine, the construction mafia arrives on site through intimidation and violence. Everybody leaves. They then put their own people looking after the site. Plant goes missing, cables go missing, tires go missing, batteries go missing, chairs go missing, seats go missing, windscreens go missing. No, we don't know what happened. Loss of material, stone, sand, bricks, concrete. It just vanishes because, as you can imagine, the construction site becomes porous because you lose your own security on site. So anything that can be stolen gets stolen. Loss of skilled labor and staff. I'm not just talking about engineers. I'm talking about expert bricklayers, expert workers on concrete, vibrators, skimmers, plasterers, expert glazing contractors. Engineers don't use their hands to build sites. Expert laborers build sites. And this is what a lot of people forget. You have expert laborers that will not go to certain areas anymore because they are afraid for their lives. Then you've got the skills, the educationally skilled side of it. You have engineers pouring out of this country. And of course, for the insurer, it's risk, just huge amount of risk because your site becomes porous. The site is no longer controlled. What you also have is the risk of time. The project is delayed, you're on risk for a lot longer than you need to be because practical completion is delayed. Okay. Right. What is the modus operandi? The modus is literally the same for every single attack I've ever worked on. And I've been doing this since early 2018, late 2017 or so. Right. And this is an expanded modus because I'm taking into account every sort of one I've dealt with. They initially infiltrate the labor, and they infiltrate the labor on site to gain information. Who's your contract manager? Who controls the various gangs of laborers? What is the project? What is project value? Who do you work for? Which subcontractor? Where's that person getting paid? A lot of them are politically connected. They get told this contract's been awarded. It's just been awarded to these individuals. It's just been awarded for this amount of money. And so that's important. They're given the heads up internally from procurement, from SCM departments, supply chain management departments. They are very connected internally. They often walk onto site unannounced. They will know how to get onto site. They will be walked onto site. They will be assisted onto site, and they arrive with surprise. Or they're an existing contractor who has either done their work and doesn't need to be on the site and walks off site and just walks onto site. So there could be, their scope could be finished. They'll walk back onto site. People know who they are. Impromptu meetings. They are great at just walking into a meeting that's running. So as I've said, I've been in technical meetings, progress meetings, where the next second, the door just bursts open. And there are 4 guys holding R5s, 2 guys dressed in Armani suits, and they just start screaming. And you just sit there going, what the heck is this? And you try and calm it down. They don't give you any warning. They'll walk onto site and they'll demand, where's the contract manager? Where is this individual? I know David is the contract manager. Where does he sit? Where is he now? They'll walk into the site office. They'll sit down and they'll say, right, where is he? He needs to be here in 30 minutes. If he's not here in 30 minutes, we're closing the site down. That is how they work. Demands are mainly verbal. Recently, we've been able to get a few of them to put their demands in writing and onto a letterhead, which of course, as you can imagine, really helps with high court applications. The local SAPS is completely unwilling to help. They are petrified of the construction mafia. They are petrified of the business forums. A lot of them know who the cops are. We've had members of the business forum say to us, oh, we know you went to this police station and you spoke to Beggy. Beggy's not going to help you. Beggy knows who I am. He's not going to help you. And if he does help you, I'll go to his house tonight. We've had that said to us. The SAPS just is unwilling. They do not get involved. They don't even help you. They won't even open a case for you. Local labor is threatened. They chase the labor off the site. The labor will not come back to site, which means your work doesn't get done. Suppliers are threatened. We've had suppliers refuse to deliver goods. We've had suppliers refuse to get involved in projects. The project ultimately stops. All work on site stops. Okay, that is their aim, because they know if the work stops, your pocket gets hit, and as a consequence, you are then desperate and you want to get out of it. Okay. So for some reason, okay, so modus. Okay, so what do they want? Money, money, money. Don't for a minute think that these are philanthropic people. All they want is money. We've watched the business forums go from driving like quite humble little buckies and wearing jeans and t-shirts to these guys arrive on site now in Range Rovers, wearing Armani suits. The one guy up the north coast, actually the one guy in Mpumalanga has a gold-plated AK-47 that he carries. You know, it's all about money, and they are making a lot of money. Okay. When I'm giving advice to contractors on site, what do I tell them to do? I tell them immediately stop work, protect the works, plants and equipment. You need to mitigate your loss. Seek urgent intervention from the SAPS. Write to the SAPS. Put it in writing what you're doing. Send people to sit there. Try and negotiate. Try and mediate. Get these people on camera. Record them. Find out what their names are. Find out their details. Get their telephone numbers. Get their email addresses. And then, of course, litigate urgently. Bring the High Court application. Okay. And one thing that's not there is immediately phone your broker and let your insurer know what's going on. Insurance risk, damage to the works, temporary and permanent, damage to plants and equipment, injury to people and third parties on site or third parties on the road, remain on risk for prolonged period due to delay, pay to completion is pushed out. We've had third parties injured. We've had huge accidents happen on public roads because they've shut a road-based construction site. The works were currently underway. A trench had been dug along the road. About 2 hours later, a taxi full of people hit the trench and rolled, and people died in the taxi. Those people then sued the construction company, say, "Oh, you left the road in an incomplete, dangerous position." What do you do? Okay. What should the insured do? Under all four contracts, it's arguable that outside third-party pressure should result in a force majeure extension of time, claim, or event. Rather than argue about what a contractor could or should do, have anticipated or done, one should rather be proactive and tackle the issue head-on. Under all four contracts, I'm talking about the NEC, FIDIC, I'm talking about the JBCC and GCC, possession of site passes to a contractor at the commencement of the project, the contractor is at risk. And engineers, when you lodge your claims now, are pushing back and they're saying it's not a force majeure. It's not a claim. You should know about these people. They come to sites every day. So it's difficult. The contractor is at site on risk. The contractor is under no obligation to engage with any outside third parties. Any BE or local community requirement set out in the tender or contract document is explicit. They have to comply with those requirements. How they comply with those requirements is up to the main contractor. However, if you don't comply and if you're rude and you send these people away, you can expect force to be met with force. Okay. According to the SAPS and the South African Secret Service, because believe it or not, they have been involved in this as well, you should not engage them at all. They say, don't entertain them, don't engage them. Okay, then I'm going to have my site closed. What we have done is we have successfully engaged and proactively engaged certain business forums that we know to be very bad. And the reason that we have certain projects on the go at the moment on huge national routes that are successful is we have been proactive in our engagement. We've known who the business forums are. We've gotten them involved in site early, and it's not great, but it is what it is. So legal action can be taken. You have to approach the court on an urgent basis. And remember, what you're effectively asking the court to do is to interdict a third party from not breaking the law. Now, this might sound absolutely bizarre, but that's what you're asking the court to grant an order. You're saying to the court, please order them not to break the law. Court, please ask them not to commit a crime. That might sound like ordinary to us normal humans, but that is what you're asking the court to do. So, and believe it or not, some courts are reluctant. They say to us every week, but how do you know it's these people? Because the problem is you have to identify the people. You have to identify the individuals who are causing, or the entities that are causing the problem. And that's very difficult because they've become very clever now. They know that if they don't give you their identity, you can't bring the application. Okay. And engaging with them and mediating has proved to be very, very problematic. Okay. Delango Kubona was the original. They were the OEM, the OG. They were the first proper business forum on the ground. They would arrive on site in suits and demand subcontract work and labor work. They would insist on meeting with the management. They would threaten to shut down the site and harm representatives if their demands were not met. They would produce their own rates which generally have no correlation to rates of other laborers or subcontractors. So they would say, we want to bring in our own TLBs. We want to supply the gravel. We want to supply the cement. And here is our rate. And the rate would be like 500% higher than any other rate. If you don't like that rate, there's no other rate, and we'll stop the work. We will ensure the concrete supplied by no one else. We will ensure the aggregate is supplied by no one else. And how do they ensure it? They wait outside your construction site. The supplier arrives. They walk up with guns and they say, turn around, leave. Okay. If you do engage with them, what happens? The work is often 99.999% of the work is substandard, or it's not done. If it's defective, you call them out, they refuse to attend to defects. If you don't pay them, they shut your site down. They then come back with even more violence. And it's much harder to interdict someone once you've engaged with them and once you've got a contract and once they've done work on the site. Because the court then says, well, isn't this just, you know, you being a bit bitter? Isn't this a civil dispute? Shouldn't you be resolving the dispute? Okay. So I don't want this all to be doom and gloom. As I said, we do have a few projects where we have been successful in engaging with them. We have been proactive. We have been able to actually pin them down and to get to the bottom of it. And that's been very useful. But I would say that 9 out of 10 times, you are just not able to engage with them. They are incredibly militant, and you've just got to be aware as a broker when a contractor comes to you and says, I've been awarded this new project, very excited, honeymoon period, everybody drinking champagne. Where is the project? Is it rural? Is it isolated? What is the value? Is it a labor heavy or a material heavy project? Is it a project that's gone out on tender before? Has it been cancelled? Why was it cancelled? Is it a project that has been hit by the business forums before? Ask the questions, learn the risk. Your client, your insured might not even know that to be the case. Ask the questions. And for insurers, the risk, of course, is you're on risk for a much longer time. For a broker as well, if you know your client site has been attacked, warn your insured, guys. If the work stops for longer than a certain period of time, you're no longer on cover. You know how many contractors I know come to me and say, oh, we need to lodge a claim for X. And I go, oof, work stopped for 9 months. We told your broker, no. Okay, why do you think you're still covered? Why wouldn't I be covered? Okay, you haven't read your policy. It's information, it's education. And I think a dialogue has to be created with the insureds to say, if this attack happens, guys, you have to let us know immediately, because we need to take proactive steps. I believe that insurers should be put on notice immediately. Guys, our site's been attacked. Just to let you know, we are engaging with attorneys. We are working, we're speaking to our engineer and our employer. We are covered by you, just to let you know. And for me, it's critically important that the channels of communication are open. If the insurer knows and the broker knows and the insured knows, and you're all three of you speaking to each other, number one, you're going to increase reporting. Number two, you're just going to let everyone know what the position is. The insurer can then help. The insurer can maybe get involved. The broker can feed information through, and if there's damage on site, it can be assessed faster. The claim can run faster. It'll just streamline the entire process. And of course, you know, SASRIA will have a certain involvement as well, and it'll be important to ensure that the SASRIA coupons aren't cancelled, SASRIA is up to date, the SASRIA values are right, and that everybody, again, it's about communication. And that's why this talk is so important, because it gets people talking, it gets brokers speaking to insureds, it gets insureds speaking to each other, looking at their cover. Is the cover sufficient? Is the SASRIA cover we have sufficient? Is it in place? Is it relevant? Is it current? And it gets everybody speaking to the people that hold the purse, being the insurer. Where are we all with this? And it's incredibly important. So yeah, I hope that was useful.
Definitely. Thank you so much, David. For me, it was very insightful, informative. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure iTOOs and our fellow brokers did as well. Just a few comments or takeaways from me from your presentation. I'm actually a bit mind baffled that our ministers are not even aware of what's going on out there. So it then becomes difficult for government. I mean, then what does government do in such a case? They're unable to do anything if our ministers are not even aware. Another thing is it's really sad when lives are lost. People, like you're saying, on a long list waiting for houses for years, and it can't be completed. Again, much like our medical industry, where our specialists, our doctors are leaving for greener pastures. Now we're taking skilled workers away from our construction sites. Again, as well, we're now placing unskilled workers to complete these projects. Does that not open up another can of worms? Perhaps for your defective workmanship claims. So yeah, there's a risk there again for the insurer. So yeah, it's an interesting topic. Like I said, I thought it was something that had died down, but obviously it's very, very active still, and it's ongoing.
Yeah, and they're also they're you know, a lot of my colleagues are just not willing to get involved in this. I know at our firm there's only 2 of us really that are still willing to bring the applications and to get involved, because as I say, our lives have been threatened. I go to construction sites now, and I'm on site every day. You've just got to be very, very, very alive to the fact that there is this phenomena out there, and you've just got to park your car cleverly. You've got to just be very careful.
And your life is in danger. I mean, I read an article as well where one of the community workers then pulled up to the project manager and said, showed him a 17 Rand ammunition or AK-47 Rand bullet, and is like, your life is worth this if you don't meet my demand. So it's really scary to think what's happening and what's going on out there. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for the insurance industry. So yeah, I don't know. Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? Is there a way out? I don't know.
Well, the way out is effective policing, and like I said, what I find so interesting is we've had meetings on very big projects. So you can imagine when you're refurbishing the entire N3, like what's happening at the moment, that's a critical arterial road, and I know that there are elements of the State Security Agency that actually got involved on the N3 projects, investigating where they're going to be attacks, how. So there are ways, and the N3 project hasn't been delayed. It's Raubeck's very forward thinking, very proactive. But what we need is effective policing. What you need is you need people out there that are actually going to get the job done and are actually going to get out there, effectively police, prevent people when these guys arrive on site with guns brandished. They're going to be arrested. There's got to be a consequence. That will stop this, and some education. You know, Regulation 9 doesn't exist anymore. You have no right to the work. The thing is, they don't care anymore. They've made so much money. Like, as I said, I've watched these guys go from being jeans and t-shirt wearers to wearing Armani suits, arriving in Range Rovers. The one guy in Mpumalanga has a gold AK-47. Like, it's ridiculous. They've made a vast amount of money, and until there's effective policing, I think we're going to struggle.
Yeah. I see we almost ran. Well, we've run out of time. I'm not sure if I can take maybe 2 or 3 quick questions from one question. I'm told I can take one. Let's take. I saw there is. I saw an interesting one. Yeah, the scroll. Yeah.
And of course, one of the problems where I'm seeing now is for project-specific cover, people are forgetting to link SASRIA. So project-specific cover is put out there, and then SASRIA isn't linked. And of course, this ought to be a SASRIA claim. and of course it's a loss. So you know, you've got to be alive for project specific insurance. This is happening.
All right, let's quickly just take then one question we allowed from Marvin Barnabas. He's asking, with the rampant surge of the construction mafia, have there been any wins with the cases and interdicts lodged? And what were the consequences for the individuals identified in terms of prosecution and the outcomes thereof?
So I'm not a prosecutor, nor my policemen. I don't know what happens on that side of things. But literally every single interdict we bring, and we've probably bought 50 or 60 over the years, we're successful in every single one. We get the show from the SAPS then involved because we serve it on the ministers. Once we get that court order, traditionally people disperse. They don't like the idea of being arrested. We have arrested a few people. I don't know what's happened to them. You are, I would say 90% of the time, you are successful in bringing the attack to an end. The problem is that 10% where they use the court paper to light a fire that destroys plant. So we've seen the malicious side of it. You bring the High Court application, you get your order, the sheriff and cops arrive, disperse. They then stay there for 3 or 4 days. On the 5th day, these guys come back and destroy everything. Because of course, if I can't work there and I can't make money, you can't work there and you can't make money. So it must just get destroyed. So that is the other side of it as well.
I see. We've unfortunately ran out of time. I will post your email address for any of the participants who have any further questions for you, David. But once again, thank you for your time, for the insightful session from iTOO, and we'll chat soon. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.